What does Bitcoin mean to you? What does it improve?
So, like I mentioned earlier, I've known about Bitcoin for a long time. Everyone seems like they've known about it. Oh, I knew about it. My friends are buying drugs with it. They're buying fake IDs.
I knew about it in 2007.
Yeah, exactly. So I'd be rich now. No, you wouldn't, because you would have sold. Right?
Fucking idiot.
I've known about it for a long time, and I didn't really even care about it until I heard about and or met people who actually genuinely needed it. And what I mean by that is everyone in this room has a bank account.
Yep.
We're relatively privileged when it comes down to it. Seriously.
Relative? We're the most privileged in the world. We're the 1% of the 1%,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
We're very lucky.
Absolutely. We're so lucky. I go into and open a bank account. I don't even have to go into a branch, right? I've opened a Bank of America bank account from my cell phone.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Not everyone can do that, right? We have so many people living under authoritarianism. Some people, if your name is Osama bin Laden, how are you going to open a bank account? Right?
Yeah.
It's going to get flagged. You're going to have to come in, you have to show up all these, whatever.
Or you have no electricity where you live.
Right. The story that got me, or where Bitcoin kind of collapsed on me, and I said, wow, this is actually something that's very profound. I read a story about Venezuelans going to the coffee shop, and they were scraping off little gold flakes to pay for coffee. That is crazy. And they have a debasing currency. That's why they're doing that. What if we had something that was more infinitely divisible like Bitcoin? That's when it sort of collapsed in on me. And that's when, okay, those are the people that need Bitcoin. I don't need Bitcoin. And again, that makes me sound pompous. Like, I don't need Bitcoin. The poor people need Bitcoin, but they do. They need it more than I do. And I'll share another story.
Can I throw some nuance in that?
Sure.
Because with American Hodl yesterday, as I mentioned, and I put a question to him about the different needs of people of the third world and Bitcoin.
Yeah.
I think it's less that these people need Bitcoin on an individual level. They need Bitcoin to work on the grand macro level. So what I mean by this is if you're in a third world country, somewhere where you're living on less than $3 a day, what do you need? You need a way of holding money and spending money, and ideally a currency that doesn't debase. But the problem we have is we have so much volatility. Mm-hmm. The debasement argument is dumb on a short-term window. Yes, eventually if it's the global currency, if Bitcoin is a global currency and has high liquidity, yes, it should be fairly stable. But while its price is not stable, it is useless to somebody living on $3 a day. It's a great payment mechanism.
Yeah.
Like, if you bought your Bitcoin in, I don't know, February of last year, halfway through the year, you could have lost half your value. So it's not that I think they need it. I think they need it to work. And there's parts of it they need right now. There's the stuff that Jack Mallers is doing with Strike.
Yeah.
That's super useful.
It's awesome.
But I think they need it to work.
Yeah.
Do you understand the difference?
I do. And I'm going to talk about Tether now, but I've heard stories from people I know, people going across borders in Russia during the sanctions, and they didn't only use Bitcoin to bring their money out of the country. They used Tether as well. And I know 8% inflation in the US dollar or whatever the actual number is terrible. But, what was Zimbabwe back in 2008 had 65 million % inflation. That's 8% is pittance compared to that, right?
You don't even need that. I mean, you can talk about Turkey at 56%.
Yeah.
You can talk about, Lebanon's just devalued their currency by another 90%. Argentina.
Yeah.
I don't know how much money you got in the bank or your savings.
Sure.
If I was hit by 90% inflation, that would wipe out everything I've done for the last 5 years.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wiped out.
Yeah. I mean, Bitcoin does I think you're actually making this argument that it does fight against currency debasement, because if everyone uses it, it's a way to opt out of their currency, right? Is that what you're trying to
I'm saying if there was no speculation against Bitcoin.
Yeah, no paper Bitcoin, right?
Yeah, well, just no speculation, and we didn't have these bull and bear markets.
Yeah.
It would be a much more useful tool against inflation.
Yeah.
Yes, the unit, you cannot debase the unit.
Sure.
But you can...
One sat is one sat unless you put a clown picture on it or something.
Yes, you can't debase the unit, but it is not a unit of account. So the speculation on it means it's too volatile for certain people as a currency. It's just way too risky. And I've had arguments on Twitter where people are like, I've defended stablecoins. I said, look, the reason I defended Tron and Ethereum is for one reason only. There are stablecoins issued on them that people find useful. And some of these people are like, no, they should be using Bitcoin. I'm like, you're fucking stupid.
Yeah.
Go to visit these countries. These people cannot afford a 50% haircut.
Yeah. We can make this a nuance show, but the nuance there is someone like my grandmother, who is an immigrant. She came to this country and she worked in a Lance factory, right, making crackers, chips, and because that's the only thing she could do. She couldn't speak English. She can kind of do, she could say fork, table, chair, things in your kitchen. And she was really good at saving her money, but all of her purchasing power was getting just wiped away over years and years and years since the 70s because she didn't know that, I need to buy stocks and bonds and rebalance my portfolio. And I hate using the term sophisticated, but because she's not a sophisticated investor, she wasn't able to save her purchasing power. So if we had a base money that Bitcoin's treated like an asset, right? If she had a base money that was treated like an asset and it kind of just ticks up along the way, it's savings technology built into money. So selfishly, I would have loved Bitcoin to be available to my grandmother as she was, coming up in a new country. So it's kind of cut in the other way, right?
Yeah, look, these are all time frames.
Yeah.
Yeah, short-term time frame, unless you pick your timing right.
Sure.
Bitcoin's either good or bad for you.
Yeah.
And I'm super conscious of not having a kind of my own time bias because I've been in Bitcoin for, let's say 6 years.
Yeah.
5.5, 6 years this time. And I've done well because of that. But there are some people who've been in it for 4 years and who are down.
Yeah. At some point, long time preference behavior needs to turn to short. You're not going to live forever, right? So at some point we need to reap what we sow. Are we going to be saying for the next 10 years, 10 years and 10 years and 10 years until we die? We're just going to do this forever? That's an issue, right?
Yeah. So what does it fix then? What are the areas of Bitcoin you're super interested in?
We're talking about my privilege, but the Fed what are they doing, man? Inflation at 8%. On one hand, I just said it's not that big of a deal. That is crazy as being, the world superpower. We have the US dollar. We need a way to opt out of that. And Bitcoin does do that. And a lot of econ twit gets mad about the fact that it has a capped supply. And I think that's a load of bullshit. No one sits there and does time value money calculations whenever they buy groceries. They just want to buy fucking groceries. And so what I do think it fixes is, maybe quite loosely, fixes the fact that our money is shit for saving. And it's sort of what I talked about earlier with my grandmother. She can save in her money and not have to worry about if Apple is going to be the dominant phone for whatever, right? That's like the best stock, whatever it is. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Do you think the Fed is evil, dumb, or do you think this is just a natural outcome from having central banking?
I think I'm naive. I don't think that our systems and our political system in the US is evil. I really don't. I do think that the incentive misalignment with the fact that there are celebrity politicians now is a huge problem because you like talking about politics. I don't like talking about politics because I get so angry about the celebrity politicians. I don't think politicians the celebrity ones, are doing what they think is best for the people. I think they are doing what they think their constituent that will get them elected purport to want. Does that even make a shred of sense?
I literally 100% agree with you. I've just written an intro for Jason Meyer's book.
Okay.
And in that, I've talked for years about this, that this political cycle, the 4-year cycle, is highly detrimental to making correct policy decisions for the electorate.
Yeah.
It's a war between two groups. I want your votes. He wants your votes. What am I going to say to get you your votes? Because I want to stay in power.
Yeah. And notice I'm talking about politics. However, the Fed is not supposed to be apolitical, but we know that's not the truth. Right? We had Donald Trump, President Donald Trump, saying, well, you know what to do here. No, I don't know what to do here. So I don't know how polarized the UK is.
Not like the US.
It's terrible.
Yeah, I think for a couple of reasons. I think 2 reasons. Firstly, we don't have a 2-party system. So we have that kind of like release valve.
Yeah. You guys have a communist party or a socialist party. We have that in Greece too.
Well, no, we have our communist party is the Labour Party.
Oh, okay.
Well, when Corbyn was in power, it was certainly a socialist party.
You're over here from me right now.
Okay, so we have Conservatives and Labour are 2 main parties.
Okay.
Conservatives are your more fiscally conservative party, but also they're more, I would say they're more for the elites.
Yeah.
Some people say the elites, the higher paid, because people who pay the most tax, they tend to be the higher paid, and they want to pay less tax. Although my dad's working class, my dad always voted conservative because he was like, they take less of my money away by tax.
Yeah.
I work fucking hard, leave my money alone.
Yeah.
The Labour Party tend to be more socialist, more have a deeper relationship with the unions, and tend to be those who a bit more like the Democrats. They want kind of free healthcare, everyone wants free healthcare in the UK, but free education, those kind of things. So I think because we also have the Liberal Democrats, but they're kind of, if you don't want to vote either party, you kind of tend to go for them. They're kind of like your champagne socialists, your middle, you're like your middle class. They're your middle class voters who are embarrassed to vote Conservative, because Conservatives are seen as they're actually
the rich people party.
Yeah, people call them Tory scum. And they tend to think they're very inconsiderate about the rest of society.
People, they're mean too, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. But we have the Green Party, which has quite a solid position. So we just have that. But I think the even bigger reason, we don't have news channels dedicated to a particular wing of politics.
Yeah.
The BBC, I can see the criticism because it's essentially state media, but also it's so regulated.
Yeah.
And it has so many different like watchdogs, keeping an eye on it, that they kind of have to be fair.
Yeah.
And then all the other channels, like we got GMB, what's GM News?
GB News.
GB News.
Yeah.
That's kind of trying to be like Fox News. It's an absolute shit show full of morons. And then we have, but Sky News tends to be pretty, would you say balanced as well?
Yeah, a little bit. It's if you try to like draw it in a map, it'd probably be BBC would be like just left of centre, and Sky News probably just right of centre, I would guess.
Yeah. But it's not like...
But they're pretty close. Like BBC especially is pretty... I know people hate BBC and I stand up for it all the time. I'm a statist or whatever, but I think the BBC is about the best news organisation in the world.
Yeah, I would probably agree with Danny on that.
Do the talking heads make a ton of money like they do in the US?
No, and it's not a talking heads show. It's not a talk... They're not...
There's no Tucker Carlson's, Anderson Cooper's.
No, we don't tend
John
to.
Hannity.
No, we have people who have regular slots, but not like that.
Okay.
If anything, Danny, I'd say they're both left of centre. BBC's a bit more left.
Probably, yeah, that's probably fair.
Okay.
But I kind of trust some of the reporters as journalists more than I would trust in the US.
As you should.
I find Fox News / MSNBC, CNN, when you come from the UK and watch that, it's fucking mental.
It's a little different.
I mean, it's so obvious to me how much this is like leading to the fracturing of society here.
Yeah.
Like these people, the incentive structure is to make one group of people hate the other group of people.
Yeah. There is a shred of hope, though. I mean, I still do think that most people aren't polarized, because I have friends and family that sit on either side of the spectrum, and they're closer to the center than I think our media sort of shows. And so I think a lot of us are kind of looking at these crazy people who are on either side, like, what are y'all doing? So I think there's a shred of hope in there where people are going to stop trusting them and stop listening to them and just kind of move.
But the center ground has no power in that there's no incentive structure for a center ground. Well, I'm going to come back to that.
Sure.
There's an incentive structure for either wing to fight, argue, point out the differences, and that there's an aligned incentive structure for politicians to then disagree with each other and never, give ground. Like when I interviewed Ted Cruz, I said, "Can you tell me one thing you like about the Democrat Party? One policy you like?" He wouldn't give me one.
Not even one.
Not one. And so I think that's the incentive structure. Even if the middle ground's 80% of rational people, where is their power to make change?
Well, what is Ted Cruz going to do if all of a sudden liberals like Bitcoin? Is he going to not like Bitcoin anymore?
That's a tricky one.
Yeah.
That is a tricky one. And if he does, I mean, like if he changes his opinions like that, it shows that how shallow and how kind of like a terrible person he is, because this is not how you should be making decisions. I understand differences of opinions on things like abortion, big key issues like that. I understand some of the challenges, the big issues that people are fighting over. But if you choose to fight on every issue, then what are you standing for?
I think the problem as well is like at an individual level, people are very rational. And like you can have a one-on-one conversation in private with someone and most of the time you can find alignment.
Yeah.
But I think the problem comes in a lot of these news organizations especially is the like social pressure of aligning to certain topics. And I think I think while the BBC I think is a pretty good news organization, I think that's their massive problem. I think they have like an internal pressure to conform to certain views. I don't think it's like a top-down issue. I think it's a social issue amongst like peer groups rather than it being like these evil overlords that tell you what your story should be.
I mean, there's a Bitcoin adjacent angle here. I think people really want to belong to a group. And I'm playing armchair psychologist right now, but everyone wants their tribe. Everyone wants to belong to something bigger than themselves. And we have people who live in New York City, 10 million people. People live in London, 10 million people, and they're piled on top of each other, and they feel all alone. I'm sure you guys know the people who have done this, and you talk to them, and they're like, wow, I don't have any friends in New York. I don't really have any friends in London. I don't have any friends. What's a big city in Australia? I'm sure I know your answer. Sydney. Like, right, it's things like that. So people are they just will latch onto anything that they can feel belonging to. And that might actually be why a lot of people are probably Bitcoiners, right? They don't have very many friends in wherever they live, and they find this like-minded or they think like-minded community with Bitcoin maximalists, and I'm a Bitcoiner now. It's my tribe.
Well, I think certainly early on, I mean, I'm saying this because I am one.
Yeah.
Like I think a lot of Bitcoiners are kind of weirdos. Like they kind of.
It's the spice of life, though. It's good.
Well, they're just. I think they're rebels or people who see the world differently or know something's wrong or contrarian.
Yeah.
Because I think you kind of have to be to actually be able to
early Bitcoiner.
Yeah, when you think about what you're saying to people, you're saying, by the way, this money we have that we spent for years is completely wrong. What actually we need is a form of money that nobody controls, that's completely decentralized, that's digital, that has this consensus layer. Trying to explain that to people and say, what do you mean? The government doesn't? Yeah, no, the government won't control money. Remember, the government are all evil and bad. You sound like a fucking nutter.
Yes.
So you have to be contrarian. You have to be able to like think like that. Fortunately, what I think has been happening over the last couple of years is that kind of contrarian thinking is going mainstream.
Being a contrarian is not being contrarian anymore.
Yeah, because it's just like so many lies and bullshit.